Told you yesterday that Trevor Manhertz was likely to commit to Indiana today, and he did. 1 o'clock this afternoon was the scheduled time. It was a little bit later than that Manhertz said, you know what, I'm coming to IU. We forgive him for being a little bit late. Don't do that at practice, Trevor. Trevor Manhertz, a kid who can flat shoot. He can defend a little bit. I'm not too worried. People say, you know what, his motor defensively, not at the highest level. Well, nobody's is in high school. Again, I'm not worried about it. I'll tell you who I think his comp is, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'll try to explain it. Bill Polian, evidently, according to reports, in a meeting with Pro Football Hall of Fame voters, kind of poisoned Bill Belichick's opportunity to be named to the Hall of Fame in his first time eligible for that honor. I don't care. Why do people care? Well, how does this turn Bill Belichick into a victim? And nobody cares what Bill Polian has to say about things. For God's sake, first, Bill Polian said, I think that I voted for Bill Belichick. Now he says, I 100% certainly voted for Bill Belichick. I don't know what changed. It doesn't make any difference. This is the biggest non-story of non-stories in the history of non-stories. Why would anybody care whether Bill Belichick is elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame on his first year of eligibility? What does that matter about it? Do we feel bad for Bill Belichick and his 26-year-old girlfriend as he tries to put together a reasonably competitive program at North Carolina? What do we care? Doesn't make any difference. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame eventually. Patriots fans, don't sweat that. Bill Polian, kind of a dick about the whole thing, but that's nothing new. That's him. People who reach the height that Bill Polian reached, generally they're really, really insecure, and they cover that insecurity with a lot of bravado and a lot of meaningless and false confidence. That's Bill Polian. Bill Polian is that guy. So what? You know what? He won his Super Bowl with the Colts. He ruined, I think, an undefeated season in 2009. The guy operates from a place, a man with kind of a broken brain. But he was smart in this respect as a GM. He worked for the Bills, was named GM. They had Jim Kelly. Then he kind of wore out his welcome because he is kind of that prickly guy with the Bills, and he wound up with the Carolina Panthers. They go get Kerry Collins. They were a startup. They got Kerry Collins. Came to the Colts in 98 after the 97 season when Bill Tobin got fired, and drafted with the number 1 overall pick, the easiest draft pick in the history of number 1 draft picks, drafted Peyton Manning. And he'll try to tell you, well, it was very close, which confers upon him some level of wisdom to know that Peyton Manning was going to be a success and Ryan Leaf was not. If you were around in 1998, Ryan Leaf had hardly played for Washington State, for God's sake. And Peyton Manning had played a lot of football at Tennessee. There was no question in anyone's mind, including Bill Polian's, that Peyton Manning was the guy. Says it came down to the wire. My ass. We knew they were printing Peyton Manning Colts jerseys at the Logo 7 factory. They were doing that a week before the draft. Didn't come down to the wire. Absolute nonsense. But that's a guy who isn't just smart. He needs everybody to think that he's smart. So this is neither giving Bill Polian a pass, nor is it saying that, Bill Belichick doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. None of that. Bill Belichick, if the Hall of Fame voters wanted to penalize Bill Belichick for Spygate and Deflategate, fine. Have at it. There is no black line between Hall of Famer and not Hall of Famer. That's why people vote for it. Otherwise, you would just say, here's a statistical data point that separates a Hall of Famer from a non-Hall of Famer, and let the data point suggest which is which and determine which is which. It doesn't exist in football. That's why you got these guys voting, and these guys and women voting. Good heavens. Who the hell cares who's in a Hall of Fame? What are we, out of our minds? Charles says, gee, Kent, with IUFB winning the title and Purdue losing 3 in a row, latest to IUBB, at least they don't have to live in West Lafayette, right? That's absolutely true. You know, West Lafayette, man, I got to tell you the truth. I don't know anybody who's been happy to live there. I've known people who've gone to Purdue. I've known people who've worked at Purdue. I've never heard people say, you know what, when I retire, I'm moving back to Purdue. I'm moving back to West Lafayette. That's not a conversation I've ever had with anybody. There are people who go to Bloomington to go to school, and they never leave. That happens. There are people like the Dalai Lama, like Leonard Bernstein, who go to Bloomington because it's beautiful. And they enjoy it, and it's calming, and creative juices flow. REM came there to record an album. John Mellencamp, Hoagie Carmichael, musical genius after musical genius, they spend their time in Bloomington. What do you have in West Lafayette? You've got people who are so eager to get out of West Lafayette that they study to leave the planet Earth. They become astronauts. That's how eager they are to leave West Lafayette. They say, West Lafayette, my God, if the rest of this planet is like this, I just have to leave. And so they study and study and study and study and train and train and train and train so they can get on a rocket and get off this orb. That's West Lafayette. Jesse Eisenberg always talks about living in Bloomington. And who else? Robbie Benson. Maybe we should have stuck with Jesse Eisenberg. I don't know. We're going to talk about Pacers tonight. Pacers and the Bulls playing tonight at Cambridge Fieldhouse. We're going to talk a little bit about the Colts and that self-scout that is ongoing. We'll talk about IU. Is it a mirage? What we've seen the last 2 games, or can we count on Indiana to remain competitive and focused for 40 minutes moving forward, especially these 2 huge games against UCLA and Southern Cal? These are teams that are kind of in that. You got top-end teams in the Big Ten, you got the middle teams in the Big Ten, you got the bottom teams in the Big Ten. Indiana, UCLA, Southern Cal, they're all in that middle tier. And you're going to have to be in the top half of the middle tier in order to make the NCAA tournament. That's the challenge that lies immediately ahead of the Hoosiers, is playing against UCLA and Mick Cronin. Good Lord, the insufferable Mick Cronin. As he watches his team with his hands clasped behind his back. What an arrogant turd that guy. I have no time for Mick Cronin. Ugh. So glad he never came to Indiana. That would have been worse. I would have been pining for the days of Tom Crean if Mick Cronin had come to Indiana. We're going to talk just for a minute. All but 2 of the vacant coaching positions have been filled in the NFL. The head coaching vacancies have been filled. Who did the best job at getting a guy who is going to be able to put his team back in kind of a realm of relevance moving forward the quickest? I will tell you. What else we got? That's about it, right? Yeah. Trevor Manhertz. Love him. This is Inside Indiana Sports Now for Wednesday, November 28th, 2026. Brought to you by the great people. How many Big Ten teams get into the tournament? I'm going to say 9. I'm going to say the top half of the teams in the Big Ten get into the tournament. That is my prediction. I think Mike DeCourcy says 10. And people then say, well, Mike DeCourcy is paid by the Big Ten. Paid by Fox, paid by the Big Ten. However, that would never change. Anybody who knows Mike DeCourcy knows this. He's not going to change his opinion based upon from whom he gets a paycheck. That is not the way his brain works, for good or ill, depending on how you look at it. Pragmatists will say, why not? And then, romantists will say, well, of course not. You can't let money sully your soul. That's Mike DeCourcy. We are brought to you by the great people at Today's Dentistry. At Today's Dentistry, Dr. Mike O'Neill is the best dentist in the world, and he's been my only dentist for the last 33 years. You got to go to Mike O'Neill. You got a chance in your health care to participate with the best, have the best care for you, and you don't do it? You willingly refuse? Don't be ridiculous. Call Dr. Mike O'Neill today, 317-849-2933. Ask for Julie. Tell her that Ken told you to call. What do I think about the Browns' new head coach? The Browns' new head coach, I got to tell you the truth, Todd Monken, I was unaware of his existence until earlier today. He was the Ravens' defensive coordinator from 23 to 25. He was also the Browns' defensive coordinator in 2019. So he's a guy, obviously, who has engendered some respect from within the organization. I think it's a dead-end job. Who is the last Browns coach to really succeed? I think you got to go back to Paul Brown himself. That's crazy, right? This is, there's some jobs you take and you're happy you take them because you got a chance to see how good you can be at a job. And then there are jobs you take because, hey, I get to put my kids through college. I get to have a nice retirement. My wife and I are going to enjoy living in the villages in Central Florida and going to concerts every night and running around on golf courts, and it's going to be awesome. Golf carts. That is what Todd Monken has done. That's what he's set himself up for. I hope it was a 5-year deal. I hope all the money's guaranteed. He's likely to make it 2. Then he gets the 3, and he can either go back to coaching if he wants, or he can take all his money and head down to the villages, where retirees go to die. The team, I think, that did really well, the Giants hiring John Harbaugh. I think that was a really, really good hire. The others, I can't believe that the Bills fired Sean McDermott in order to hire their offensive coordinator, who wasn't going anywhere. You could still have Joe Brady be the offensive coordinator, Sean McDermott run the. I don't understand what they're doing. Like, that's bizarre. That owner has stepped to the side of sane thought and logic. Kevin Stefanski with the Falcons, that's a meh hire. Jeff Hafley, he was the Packers defensive coordinator. He's going to Miami, another meh hire. Jesse Minter, I think, might be pretty good with the Ravens. He was the Chargers DC. Mike McCarthy going to the Steelers, I think is ridiculous. I don't know what you get. I mean, you want to finish 9-8, you should have hung on to Tomlin. 10-7, that's fine. McCarthy is that kind of coach. Robert Saleh, the 49ers defensive coordinator, going to the Titans. Just by virtue of the Titans hiring him, I know that that's the wrong hire. You fire, honest to God, you fire Mike Vrabel in order to hire Robert Saleh? Are you insane? What is the matter with that organization? Thank God, in Indianapolis, we're treading water, right? We're neither soaring nor plummeting. We're just stuck in the middle. I'd rather be stuck in the middle than stuck where the Titans are. And that's at the bottom of the ocean, wondering, hey, there go the Colts. Hey, there go the Texans. Hey, there go the Jaguars. All right. There's the SpongeBobs of the NFL. Let's talk about Trevor Manhertz. I like Trevor Manhertz. 4-star kid, ranked in the 50s or 60s, somewhere in there. I don't really care. The thing that people like about him, they say he's 6'8". He's really about 6'6 and a half, 6'7". He's a really good shooter, and he's really long. 6'11 length, they say, for a 6'7 frame, +4, that's nice. So he's a wing who can rebound. He can get after people a little bit. They say his motor on the defensive end isn't great. Well, these are people who watched him play for Garner Road on the AAU circuit. You know what? Nobody plays defense in AAU. And in high school, you don't have to play defense as hard as you do in college. So people who are hoping to see collegiate level defense from a kid like Manhertz, they're not going to get it until he gets to Indiana. He has the athleticism, and he's going to add the bulk. He's really thin. But that thin is going to bulk up nicely. He's going to hit shots. You got to be able to shoot to play for Darren DeVries. That's a good thing. I think he's going to be just fine. I think he projects as a 3-year starter who is going to be really, really good. The guy that I would equate him to, and this goes back 25 years, but I'd equate him to a 6'3 kid who played at Lawrence North and went to Michigan State, and that's Chris Hill. I think Manhertz is really, really smart, a really good shooter who is going to know the game at an exceptional level and is going to be able to be taught the game. I talked to Dan Dockich about this on his radio show today. We did a power hour, a very special Wednesday power hour. It was awesome. And for the period that we talked about sports, which was like the first half hour, I could try to explain the second half hour to you, but I don't think I would do it justice. What Dan said is that it looks like what Indiana has is a bunch of good listeners. Like Lamar Wilkerson is a good listener. People explain things to him, and he responds by doing the thing that's been explained to him. And he cited last night as an example where he took a couple of bad shots. There was a timeout. There was a little bit of a talk between the coaching staff and Wilkerson. And he came back in, and he played a little bit differently offensively. That's nice. I think that Manhertz is another kid who is going to be an adept learner. I think that also of Prince Alexander Moody. And then you've got the other kid, Von Kavala from Scottsdale, plays at a prep school in Scottsdale, Arizona. I don't want to get all like, old guy yelling at clouds. But the only thing that I don't like about Kavala is the hair. What's going on with the hair? Get that mop cut or style it somehow. Just having hair hanged out like you a damn caveman, that's crazy. We don't like crazy. So get it straight. Come to Indiana. Don't try to brand yourself as a caveman guy with crazy hair. All right. It's amazing what one win can do. And that was last night, that game against Purdue. I went into it thinking one thing about Indiana because I thought that the IU win against Rutgers was kind of a mirage. I didn't know whether it was Indiana being really good or Rutgers being terrible or a combination of the two. So playing it safe, I thought, you know what? Indiana is still Indiana. Rutgers is just god-awful. Not so much. Rutgers, not bad last night in the game that immediately preceded the IU game. And Rutgers, as it turns out, isn't so bad. And Indiana, as it turns out, was 5 points better than Purdue last night and really should have been 11 points better or more. Should have been a 10 to 15 point game if Indiana hits free throws. They missed all three front ends of 1-and-1s. What are you doing? They hit those shots. That game isn't even close. Against Purdue, according to Ken Palm, a top 10 team in the country. I thought the crowd was great last night. I rarely think that. I rarely think that the crowd has an effect. But last night I thought that they did. When Indiana hit that little swale, all of a sudden the crowd activated and lifted them out of it. And it was tremendous. So we're thinking different thoughts about Indiana, aren't we? Whereas before we thought, oh, same old, same old. We're going to just, limp our way to another offseason where hopefully they get some transfer help and this team can become something other than what it is, which over the last 9 years has been a mediocrity. Nope. Indiana, pretty good last night. I think they can go to California, and I think they got to go to California and win one of the two. If they sweep out there, that would be sweet. That would be nice. That would put them in a position where making the tournament, they'd be in the Big Ten at that point and have three very winnable games down the stretch. A couple of tough ones, playing at Mackey and then playing at the other Assembly Hall over in Champaign-Urbana. Those would be tough games. And then there's some games that not so very tough. Kind of mediocre tough. If they can win two in Cali, then you look at you say, you know what, 11-9 is doable in the Big Ten, and at 11-9 with the schedule Indiana's had, I think they go to the tournament. That's all based upon 40 minutes of basketball last night. That's how quick it changes for IU fans, isn't it? Let's talk about Bill Polian for a minute. We did that already, but it seems there are reports that during what is supposed to be a confidential call among Pro Football Hall of Fame voters, Bill Polian may have poisoned the candidacy of Bill Belichick, saying he's going to get in, but let's not put him in the first ballot because of Spygate and Deflategate. Both of those were things. Like Patriots fans will try to tell you that they weren't. They were. Spygate was a real thing, not just in 2005, but in 2001 when they played against the Rams in the Super Bowl. There are trees, I don't even know if it exists anymore, but the Rams at their practice facility in Earth City, Missouri, they planted trees to obscure the practice field at Earth City from hotel windows about 400 yards away. That's how Mike Martz was certain that the Patriots cheated. There was no way they didn't cheat in that Super Bowl in 2001. So that's from the Rams. I have no dog in that hunt. I don't care about the Rams, really, and I don't care about the Patriots. And I don't care about Bill Belichick, and I don't understand why people do care about Bill Belichick. What do you give a shit for? Bill Belichick's got to wait 12 months to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So what? Jimmy Johnson yelling on the Pat McAfee show. He's outraged. So what? What the hell difference does it make? How self-important do we have to be? How covetous of acclaim are we that we need to be installed into into Hall of Fames of any kind on our schedule? And then you've got people with the temerity on X to suggest that Bill Belichick's saying, nope, I'm out. I'm not participating. Don't enshrine me. I will not be enshrined. No. What are you, crazy? Are you nuts? Why? What do you care? You are who you are. You're not defined by your professional success. You're defined, you know what, by the look in your wife's eyes when she looks at you. You're defined by the respect that your kids have for you and the success that your kids have achieved because in part of your parenting. That's where we are. The number of people you've helped live better lives. Not, I won 337 games and blah, 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 blah. Who the hell cares? Are you crazy people? You made a whole ton of money. You got a 26-year-old girlfriend. You got North Carolina paying you through the nose to manage that program. What in the hell are you worried about? You're living a good life, and you're gonna be a sob sister about this crap? And people on Twitter are gonna treat Bill Belichick like he's been victimized somehow? Are you insane? What's the matter with you people? Are you insane? Good Lord. Stop it. Just stop. I wish all Hall of Fames just went away. No Hall of Fames. We are so eager to have our backs patted and our backsides kissed. Like, oh, you're a Hall of Famer. So what? The hell is the difference? You know what? You got teachers who go into a classroom every day, 28 screaming kids, and at the end of the year, they're all a little bit smarter and a little bit wiser for that teacher's work. That is Hall of Fame worthy. Coaching football? What are you, deranged? All right. I'll never forgive Polian for, 2009, that was not good. I was there. I was standing next to the great Paulie Ball in the Emmis suite watching that, and when Curtis Painter came out, I looked at him and said, uh-oh, because people really weren't paying attention when Painter came out of the field, and a bunch of other guys with silly numbers came out of the field, and Peyton Manning had that helmet on, and he was on the sidelines looking like, man, I cannot believe they are not putting me in that game. Jim Irsay was in his suite, and according to people who knew him and were in his suite, darkened suite, that man was throwing furniture around. You want to know why Bill Polian was fired at the end of the 2011 season? That moment sealed his fate. But you're not going to fire a guy in the midst of a run of the Super Bowl. Polian, a coward, in not allowing his team the opportunity to go get an undefeated season. That was cowardly. And the people in Lucas Oil Stadium that day booed, and they were right to boo. And every time they bring Polian out, you hear a few boos, right? Every time they put somebody in the Ring of Honor, somebody that Bill Polian drafted or signed, that plays, there are cheers, and Pro Football Hall of Famer, former Colts general manager and president, Bill Polian. And there are cheers, polite cheers, And then there are wingnuts. I got no problem with them. I'm not being judgmental or critical of them. Boo! Not really a raucous boo. They lit it up that day, though, and they were right to. That sucked. Bill Polian took income for a lifetime away from those players and the staff. Because if you go undefeated and win a Super Bowl, you are going to be valuable to somebody for the rest of your life. And Bill Polian took that away from them on purpose. That's Bill Polian. That, my friends, that's insecurity. Whether he tanked Belichick's candidacy or not this past year, I don't give a damn. He doesn't remember who he voted for. What is he, 83 now, 84? All right. You know what? You lived a good life. Best call. It was short. It was sweet. It was to the point. Best call in the history of Indianapolis sports talk radio today. Somebody called the Dan Dockett show and said, doesn't he have grandkids? Doesn't Bill Polian have grandkids he can worry about instead of dealing with all this crap? 100% right. Get your priorities straight. Who cares? Number one, Bill, nobody cares what you think. Number two, if somebody does care what you think, why? The hell's the difference what Bill Polian thinks? Nothing against him. He was an okay GM. He hit a bunch of first rounders in a row from 98 through like 04. He was really good. He inherited a Hall of Fame level left tackle in Tarek Glenn and a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Marvin Harrison that made the easiest draft pick in the history of draft picks with Peyton Manning. He did do the work to go get Edgerrin James. That was a good pick. Reggie Wayne, really, really good pick. So he did some good, then he did some not so good, and the not so good came from like 2006 or 7, right through the end of his time here. So, and he is just incredible. So arrogant. I participated in the thing. I'll tell you a story. I don't think I've ever told this story. All right, so Bill Polian is on the Bill Polian show the week after, the Monday after, so the day after that debacle against the Jets at Lucas Oil Stadium, where they tank it, right? They pull the starters midway through the third quarter. And so the Bill Polian show airs on 1070 The Fan, which I was the program director at that time. And Bill Polian leaves. He's just gone. Callers lit him up for the majority of the hour. And finally, Polian was like, I'm out. I'm done. He leaves. Bob Lamey finishes the show solo, does the entire last segment solo. And so I was like, I gotta figure this out. There are partners, and I regret this to this day. So I went on the air, and I said, look, this happens all the time. He had stuff to do, and the last segment was short. They had run long, and there's no point in keeping him there. So it's very, very likely that Bob told him, you know what, you've taken enough abuse. Why don't you get on out of here? I'll wrap this up, and we can all go home. And so I had no idea that was the case. So I said that on the air. Channel 8 called, or the Colts called. Colts called and said, would you go on Channel 8? It can't come from us, but would you go on Channel 8 and say what you said? So I met Channel 8 down in the lobby, and I said what I said, which wasn't necessarily a lie, bald-faced lie, but it was likely an inaccurate representation of what happened. I went on and gave Polian an out. I never should have done that. I was absolutely wrong to do it. I've never done it again, and I won't do it again. I didn't know whether it was true or not. I doubted that it was true because that show is historic in the amount of vitriol from fans and Colts fans and listeners who just kept coming and coming and coming at Bill Polian. But the Colts asked me to do it, to go on TV and do that. So I did. I shouldn't have. I should have said no. I should never have gone in the studio in the first place and said something that I didn't know to be factual. I let radio listeners in Indianapolis down. I haven't done it since, and I won't do it again. Hoosiers won the Natty, and IU beat Purdue last night. This year is incredible. You're the station and sponsors to worry about. Kent, you did nothing wrong. I think I did. Robbie, I appreciate you giving me an out. But you know what? I got to tell the truth. You're owed the truth. If I'm running a radio station and we don't prize the truth over all else, I'm failing at my job. That will never happen here. And it hasn't happened again at any station I've worked with or for. True, first world problems, entitlement-minded asses think a Hall of Fame nomination is automatic or mandatory or deserved. Geez, societal digression at its core. That's 100% true. Yeah, Toby, you ought to have a channel. That's very well put. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. I appreciate you and what you said. Thank you, Robbie. I appreciate you. Polian was the best thing to happen to the Colts. Yell some haters. No, he wasn't. He didn't kill him. But, I mean, if you got Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, and Tarek Glenn, you got a leg up on everybody in the world. It was Jim Irsay's idea to hire Dungy. Thanks, Kent. Always felt that way about Polian. I do, but it's not about the Colts. Too bad Ballard doesn't have a weekly radio show. Yeah. You know what? There's smart. There's a guy who thinks, I'm smart enough to take the calls and handle all that. And then there's smart where, I don't need that headache. You know what I mean? We'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Breakfast with Kent, bright and early at 7. Become a subscriber today. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Let's go. I'm bearing my soul here, for God's sake. Hit the subscribe button.